rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Well, you know, one thing that I think the Dems in particular are having such a bit of heartburn over all of this stuff that's going on is that a lot of it, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it is basically just a response to what the Dems set up. See, the Dems have this problem, and most people who are morons do. They tend to not think about what the next thing is. They tend to not think about what their actions can do when they're no longer in charge. And that's the problem. That's the issue that the Dems are running into right now, is that everything that they were doing before, all of the things that they celebrate, all of the things that they think that they're so smart in doing, they're now getting hit with it because Trump isn't playing around. In his first term, he had a bit of a learning curve to figure out what the heck was going on. And now he's done with that. He's done his learning. He had 4 years out of office to consider and strategize and plan. And he's doing it now. Everything that he has been anticipating for the last 4 years. I got some information on that for you tonight. Also, too, Trump did a couple of things right before I came on that I'm going to tell you about, too. But first, we've got to get the Pledge of Allegiance covered. So tonight's Pledge of Allegiance is being led by Definitely Not Karen from Rumbleland. So, if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one like me, and make sure you place your hand over your heart, and follow along with Definitely Not Karen in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and thank you, Definitely Not Karen, for that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge, all you need to do is record yourself performing it in your style, or reciting it in your style, however you want to do it, and then take that file that you generate, whether it's audio, video, whatever, and send it off to me. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at americanperspective.online. That's fans at americanperspective.online, and I will get you into the rotation as soon as possible. All right, tonight's headline sponsor is theflagshirt.com. I'm wearing one of their fantastic shirts. This is the Mount Rushmore shirt right here. It's the men's cotton polo, but let me tell you, you can go and check it out. They have got a President's Day sale running on right now where you have 50% off certain select styles. Now, if you look right here, holy smokes, take a look at this. Oh, it is the exact shirt that I'm wearing. It is half off this during this sale. And if you want to purchase up to $75 or more, you will get free shipping. But I know not everybody wants to purchase something, wants to purchase a whole bunch of $75 or more kind of things. So I'm going to help you out. I am going to help you out. If you go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online, that's flagshirt.americanperspective.online, you will be presented with a coupon code that you can then copy and paste into the promo code at checkout at theflagshirt.com and get yourself $5 off your order. Go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online, and you will be presented with a promo code that you can then copy and paste into the promo code box at theflagshirt.com at checkout and get $5 off your order on American Perspective. Head on over to theflagshirt.com and get yourself patriotized. All right. They're a veteran-owned company, a great company, veteran-owned, veteran-run. Absolutely wonderful. All right. Well, let's go ahead and start off with today's version of what the hell did Trump just do, and why are the Democrats whining about it? Well, they're whining about it because we're actually finding out all of the things that they have for many years, by the way, folks, have pulled the wool over the eyes of the American people. I mean, we're talking at least a couple decades, if not more, of this stuff that has been going on. But I have a feeling that Trump's not done. And I will tell you why I have a feeling that Trump is not done. Trump is not done because of the fact that he just signed this in the Epoch Times. He just signed a memorandum directing a review of federal funding for all non-governmental organizations. That's what NGOs stands for. And the Trump memo reads, "It is the policy of my administration to stop funding NGOs that undermine the national interest." Really? And there's plenty of those, believe me. So President Trump signed this memorandum actually on February 6th, ordering a review of all funding to non-governmental organizations that receive money from federal agencies. The executive memo advancing United States interests when funding directs heads of all federal departments to review all funding provided to NGOs. It accuses many NGOs, without giving any specific examples, of engaging in actions that actively undermine the security, prosperity, and safety of the American people. Further, the memo directs agency heads to align all future funding decisions with U.S. interests and the Trump administration's goals and priorities, particularly alongside existing and future executive actions. Now, keep in mind, okay, keep in mind that this follows along with all of the stuff that was found and many more that was found during the USAID audit that occurred and found all kinds of things that were going on. I've got one or two on that tonight as well. But anyway, Kristi Noem said in an interview with Fox News Channel's The Will Cain Show, he said, many of these NGOs actually have infrastructure and operations set up in Mexico on that side of the border and are telling those illegal immigrants to come to them and they will get them across the border. So, yeah, this is just one NGO that is going along with this whole thing. Now, NGOs, by definition, are typically mission-driven advocacy or service organizations in the nonprofit sector, with large and small NGOs operating around the world for various charitable purposes, according to Harvard Law School. Two notable international NGOs that have existed for more than a century are the International Committee of the Red Cross and Anti-Slavery International. Some NGOs, Harvard notes, helped defeat apartheid in South Africa and overthrow communist regimes in Central Europe. Roughly 1.5 million NGOs operate in the United States, according to the State Department, and their work includes political advocacy on issues such as foreign policy, elections, the environment, healthcare, women's rights, economic development, and many other issues. Now, I have a question. Does any of those non-governmental organizations known as NGOs, does any of that list fall under the auspices of the Constitution of the United States as a federally mandated responsibility under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution? Does any of those? Does any of those? I don't know. I know many of those don't. Like, for an example, the environment, that's not in there. Healthcare, not in there. Women's rights, maybe. I mean, it could be tangentially connected. Economic development, not outside the United States, not a big deal. Many other issues. Foreign policy is the exclusive setup for the federal government. That's exclusively the federal government's situation. But, yep. There's a lot of things that our tax dollars are going to that we are essentially funding that aren't a part of the constitutionally mandated responsibilities of the federal government. Yeah. Now, many NGOs qualify for exemptions from state and federal taxes, but must first apply for this status with the IRS. However, political NGOs receive limited tax exemptions only for income received from contributions solicited from the general public, membership dues, or fundraising events, according to the State Department. Now, the State Department also states that there is no prohibition in U.S. law on foreign funding of NGOs, whether that foreign funding comes from governments or non-government sources. NGO funding includes donations from federal, state, local, and foreign governments, private individuals, private sector companies, and philanthropic foundations. That philanthropic foundations include people like George Soros. Well, Trump also did something else today, according to the Epoch Times, which this is very appropriate. Trump went ahead and revoked Biden's security clearance and now bars him from intelligence briefings. Well, if you asked me, this is the one thing that honestly leans toward revenge-ish kind of stuff from the Trump campaign, or from Trump to Biden, because Biden did the exact same thing to Trump after Biden took office, based off of the events of January 6th, which Trump had nothing to do with and weren't an insurrection or any of that other stuff, that the lies that the left keep running around. Well, he announced that today that he was revoking former President Joe Biden's security clearance, stopping his access to the daily intelligence briefings, which is an entitlement of most former presidents. Biden, when he took office in 2021, revoked Trump's access to classified information in daily intelligence briefings, citing the events of January 6th, where Trump's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol and disrupted the certification of the Electoral College vote, for which Trump was also impeached by the House of Representatives, Democrat-controlled, and later acquitted by the Senate, as Biden's reason. Trump obviously announced his decision on social media post on Truth Social, citing Biden's previous action as well as the report by special counsel Robert Hur. You remember that one? Yeah, it's coming back. Anyway, who investigated the alleged mishandling of classified information by Biden and issued the report in 2024. Trump wrote, "There's no need for Joe Biden to continue receiving access to classified information. Therefore, we are immediately revoking Joe Biden's security clearances and stopping his daily intelligence briefings. He set this precedent in 2021." And this is key. He set this precedent in 2021 when he instructed the intelligence community to stop the 45th president of the United States, me, from accessing details on national security, which is a courtesy provided to former presidents. To be honest with you, I don't even understand why they would even bother doing that. I mean, what's the purpose? A former president doesn't have any pull, or shouldn't have any pull within the new administration. A former president shouldn't be, far be it from the Logan Act actually being used appropriately. But I would imagine that the former president doesn't need to know all of this stuff unless they are actively involved in negotiations with other countries representing the United States and her interests. But I would imagine that once you are done being president, you would almost like not want to know any of that stuff anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to know any more of this. I've dealt with this for, 4, 8 years, whatever, nonstop, 24/7, 365 for that time. I'm finished. I don't even want to know about it. But apparently, it does happen. So anyway. So he did that today. Now, this 4 years, these next 4 years, especially in the first couple, I think, are going to be sort of a record-breaking scenario when it comes to things that are going to be run through the court system. I mean, we've got things like, the 14th Amendment. That's going to end up going all the way to SCOTUS, I'm fairly certain. We've got, now we have injunctions that are attempting to block the shuttering of USAID and shuttering, or there was another judge that went and extended the February 6th deadline a couple of days for the, quote, retirement leave about, the dismissal of the federal people to allow them and allowing them to essentially go home and stay home until September, still getting paid and still getting benefits. So that was held up in the court system as well. And then, of course, there's state court system stuff that's going on. In this particular one, oh yes, Bonnie points it out perfectly, 8 months paid vacation. Yeah. But then there is the liberal leftist lunatic states like New York that are going to get sued too. Are we going to be talking about, 2025, 2026, all the way up to 2028 is the term of the legal fight or the yeah, I can't even think of the word. I was thinking of the word and then it just lost it. It just came in and went out. But anyway, are we going to be seeing all of that? Well, it's a good possibility. Do you remember me telling you about the New York law that went into play, that Kathy Hochul put into play, requiring energy producers? And if you recall, I made a comment at the time. I was like, hey, that's really going to do wonders for the state of New York. In terms of wonders, meaning that the state of New York is going to eventually lose a lot of its businesses. And what this particular law was doing is it was causing any business, any company, such as petroleum companies or coal companies or any of these companies that had essentially contributed to what the state considered to be climate change damage, that these companies would have to retroactively pay the state for this. Okay, you recall that. I'm hoping you do. I know that my listeners are extremely smart. Well, 22 states have decided to sue the New York Attorney General over this quote unquote climate super fund law. So 22 states who contend that a new law forcing a small group of major energy producers to retroactively pay for the costs of alleged climate change damage is actually unconstitutional. The lawsuit was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of New York, Albany Division yesterday. It lists State Attorney General Letitia James, Interim Commissioner of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Sean Mahar, and Acting Tax Commissioner Amanda Hiller as defendants. West Virginia Attorney General J.B. McCluskey is leading the coalition of states challenging the New York's Climate Change Superfund Act, according to the statement from his office. Rightfully, McCluskey said the iconic New York skyline was built with the blood, sweat, and labor of the men and women of our coal fields, from the steel in their skyscrapers down to the electricity that they use every day. The level of ungratefulness from the elites in New York for the sacrifices that continue to be made to give them the lavish lifestyle they enjoy is beyond the pale. The lawsuit, according to this attorney general, seeks to ensure that these misguided policies being forced from one state onto the entire nation will not lead America into the doldrums of an energy crisis, allowing China, India, and Russia to overtake our energy independence. So this was signed into law in December of 2024 by Governor Kathy Hochul. The measure established a recovery program under which companies have contributed significantly, which again, that's sort of a arbitrary statement, to greenhouse gas emissions must pay $3 billion annually into a superfund for climate change damage allegedly done from 2000 all the way up to 2018. Companies would be required to make payments for the next 25 years, amounting to a total of $75 billion. Yeah. So, that's going to court and is likely to be considered unconstitutional. Well, remember, sorry, I had to take a drink there. Remember the thing that everybody, all the leftists were like, oh my gosh, when Trump made Mexico bend to his will because of the tariffs. Yeah. Well, much to their chagrin. Mexico did, by the way, cave. I told you about it on this program, and here they are. Mexican troops begin arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border, following a deal made to pause Trump-approved tariffs. There was at least 1,650 Mexican troops that were deployed to Cuicad, or I don't know how to pronounce it, Juarez, and almost 1950 to Tijuana. So, yeah. Mexico has started to deploy the 10,000 troops it promised it would send to its border with the United States in response to President Donald Trump's tariff threats, as his administration cracks down on border security. Troops with the Mexican National Guard and Army were seen arriving at the border separating Juarez and El Paso, Texas, on Wednesday, according to the Associated Press. The two largest deployment sites are Juarez and Tijuana, and are expected to be sent, according to the Mexican government, after the AP queried them. So, I don't know why I'm supposed to say breakfast tacos, but that's okay. Whatever works. As bam. Anyway, so there we go. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to deploy the troops to its northern border, and that's the key, the northern border, because the left made a big deal of it. They were like, oh yeah, during Biden's administration, she promised 150,000 troops. Except there was only one problem. The article that they were quoting from the AP clearly stated inside it that they were going to Mexico's southern border, not their northern border, which would be our southern border. So the 150,000 troops, or the 15,000 troops, or whatever the number actually was, I think it was 15,000. But anyway, the 15,000 troops that were going, it's like, really, guys? I mean, you can't, you're quoting, this is how bad these morons are. You're quoting an article that states right there in the article that they were going to Mexico's southern border. Really? Anyway. Yeah. So now they're starting to arrive. At Mexico's northern border. All right. Well, I was telling you and talking to you about USAID and the work that it's been doing. I went through a list of stuff that was found, as a part of that audit. Well, we were talking about NGOs just a minute ago. One of course, the NGOs that is out there has to deal with George Soros. And apparently, in the Daily Fetched, George Soros received $260 million. Not him directly, but his organizations were funneled through USAID, $260 million. Yeah. These are entities that were connected to the Soros Open Society Foundations, which have been known to fund radical movements and regime changes across the globe. So here's the thing. I don't understand how any of that is part of foreign assistance. And I keep pointing this out. The USAID keeps, they have a long list of things that they've been doing, and none of them have to deal with actual foreign assistance programs, which is what the USAID was originally founded or created by JFK to cover and coordinate. If you read the Federal Assistance Act of 1961, it's just not. Anyway, the whole point here is that the USAID has been funneling all kinds of money elsewhere that is, again, it's money that the federal government does not have the right to be passing off to any of these other organizations, these non-governmental organizations, under the auspices of some type of constitutionally mandated function. The federal government is supposed to lay and collect taxes. This is according to the very first statement in Section 1, Article 8. Lay and collect taxes to promote the items, or to be able to basically, I'm going to paraphrase here, to basically pay for the items that are within that Article 1, Section 8, to essentially pay for just the stuff that is to benefit America. Has nothing to do with foreign powers, foreign entities. There's not one single item in that Article 1, Section 8 outside of trade negotiations that has to deal with foreign assistance or foreign, any kind of foreign, like sending money to them, to other foreign countries. There's not one single thing there. The founding fathers, when they created the Constitution, did not foresee that the American people would be the essential funding of the entire world. They didn't see it as such. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't be funding all of this stuff. Anyway. Well, you know, the left, in their infinite wisdom, has been complaining about the fact that DOGE exists. And DOGE is, by the way, according to a deep dive article by Luke Rosiak from the Daily Wire, DOGE is actually a byproduct of Barack Obama. Wait, what? Barack Obama? Yes, that's right. I said it. Barack Obama. Let me explain. So here in the Daily Wire, again, by Luke Rosiak, got to give credit where credit is due. Apparently, the way that this worked was that DOGE took over what's known as the U.S. Digital Service. Now, the U.S. Digital Service was created under Barack Obama. It was a 300-person technology office that was set up inside the executive office of the president back in 2014. And it was done to fix the healthcare.gov website, which was beleaguered at the time. Okay. Bureaucrats themselves had messed the site up, so the U.S. Digital Service, hereinafter I will refer to as USDS, the USDS went out and sought Silicon Valley innovators and was authorized to circumvent federal hiring procedures to get them. What they did is they went out and hired a bunch of young people from the tech world, bringing them together to work for Obama, and basically unmoored from the stuffy rules of a typical government building or organization. Okay. It led to an environment of overtly left-wing advocacy. And Obama, of course, is being credited for designing that way. So what he did is he made the USDS administrator, its top employee, a political appointee. Now, when Donald Trump took over in 2017, and again, I'm reading from the piece here, He didn't attempt to turn the tables. Now, this is where I'm telling you that this is exactly why I'm saying this was part of the problem with Donald Trump's first term, is that he did not have and was taking the advice of deep state operatives, and this is part of the reason why has had so much of a problem between his first term and his second. He learned a lot, and he's applying all of this. So anyway, when Donald Trump took over in 2017, he didn't attempt to turn the tables. Instead, he turned the other cheek. He reclassified the USDS's top job as a career position rather than a political one, signaling that he trusted the employees to simply carry out the unglamorous job of fixing government IT. I mean, why not? That's what it was for, right? Well, the staff abused that trust. They went ahead and started using it to essentially run left-wing activism from inside Trump's White House. During his first term, it hired multiple people who had worked for, why would they have hired these people? Worked in the porn industry. One who worked in the gender studies department, and another being a transgender activist. The USDS leadership subjected staff to memos lecturing them on toxic masculinity while devoting a significant effort to DEI hiring. Really? Trump basically gave them autonomy, thinking that all they were doing is taking care of the IT of the federal workforce. Yeah. So anyway, when Joe Biden won the presidency, to kind of carry this along, he didn't even make a pretense of maintaining the nonpartisan nature. He promptly changed the top role back to a political appointment and even granted his employee waivers exempting her from any kind of ethics rules. What? The irony is that Democrats had now built a ticking time bomb. Then federal employees destroyed any pretense that, if left to their own devices, they would be apolitical instead of left-wing. That's pretty much what's been happening over the course of decades now. So essentially, this particular department was working under the Trump White House, but undermining him at every step of the way that they could. So now that Trump is back in, Elon Musk is now serving a revenge on them for all of this. So the leader of this originally was a professional bio by a lady named Claire Bailey. And her professional bio claims that she is a sex and technology expert for whom both technology and sexual media have been passions of hers since she hit puberty. She founded and runs the Nectarine Project, which is a nonprofit trying to make big tech more sex positive. She worked for MIT's Women and Gender Studies department and then for the hardcore pornography website kink.com. It wasn't the Trump there's more to it there, but it wasn't that Trump hired her per se. To the people of the USDS, Trump wasn't even president at all. So they made Bailey a high-level manager, and in September of 2019, she wrote a memo to her staff from her EOP government address. It says, I was in a conference in Boston last week, and the opening keynote was the most Machiavellian, toxic masculinity-focused approach to the project mindset I've ever seen. Let's talk about it. This is a chance for us to vent about some of the biases we've seen in our careers, especially those expressed as career advice, and talk about what we can do in our own community to guard against, dig out similar things. Please note, white, straight, cis men are welcome at this meeting, but please spend most of your time actively listening. That was the leader of this thing. Yeah. So, and this goes on. I highly encourage you, if you can, to get this story. And yeah, there was apparently Amy Paris was a part of this, and she was a trans woman working quietly at the White House to better LGBTQ plus divided by sign minus whatever lives. This is the perfect example. This entire article is the perfect example of why Trump's first term did not seem to be the biggest splash that many of us might have hoped for. So anyway, yeah, this is a long article and it goes on and talks about stuff, but yeah, it basically just demonstrates to you that the first time around, Trump unfortunately had some missteps along the way. And so this second time around, he is not taking anything for granted. So, yeah, he's gonna start cleaning things out. And so that's where DOGE comes into play for all of this. Well, I mentioned earlier with regards to wait a minute. Apparently my rumblers have gone nuts. Wait, where's my thing? Hold on. There was one in here. Where is it? There we go. It's this. Apparently my chat is going nuts. Anyway. All right. Anyway, let me get back on track here, because we are definitely off the rails. At least over on the chats, anyway. All right. So you know that I've been talking a lot about the 14th Amendment and what it actually means, where it actually states that you need to, in order to be a U.S. citizen, you must have been born here and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And of course, the biggest thing is what that actually means. And I've shown you that the original sponsor, not writer, but the sponsor for the 14th Amendment in the Senate, Senator Howard, clearly stated during the debates with regards to this that the 14th Amendment does not include foreigners, aliens, or children of ambassadors, etc., etc. Well, for whatever reason, the foreigners and aliens part never carried over to the leftist ideology in terms of figuring out. They only read the first statement, which is essentially, if you're born here in the U.S., that's it. You're born here. And you're an American citizen. But it's clearly not the case. And if you are a student of history, as I am, you can read and see that the intent of the 14th Amendment was to include the slaves, because again, this is 1866. They just finished the Civil War. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 says what they actually mean. The Civil Rights Act says that you need to be born here in the U.S. and not subject to a foreign power. Okay, so basically they are literally saying, when you take those two pieces of evidence and put them together, they are literally saying that anyone who is born of foreign-born parents are not an American citizen until they become naturalized. Okay? In which case, as I've said, the naturalization process, when you swear, okay, when you swear, the the oath, you renounce your citizenship to any of the other, any of you, you know, the country that you came from. You renounce that. So anyway, moving on with that. I've been hit a lot on X about this. And there's, you know, a lot of people, rightfully so, that are under the misguided assumption that just because it says that you were born here, then you are an automatic American citizen. But that isn't the case. And now the Tennessee Attorney General has filed a brief in support of Trump's EO limiting birthright citizenship. Tennessee AG Skermetti argued that precedent does not support the broad interpretation of birthright citizenship anymore. Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skermetti filed a legal brief in support of President Donald Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship for the children of illegal aliens. Now, let's be honest about this. That wasn't a definite, it was more of a clarification of the actual meaning of the 14th Amendment. It wasn't really where he was saying that he was going to end it, because the EO itself doesn't really talk about ending birthright citizenship. It just basically says, hey, this is the way it's supposed to be interpreted. That's it. Now, it has been swiftly challenged in the courts and has been blocked from going into effect by a second federal judge. So the first one was in Seattle, but the second one has come into play. Now, Skermetti outlined his opinion in favor of the executive order's legality in what's known as a friend of the court brief filed earlier this week, asserting that the Constitution does not guarantee birthright citizenship for those whose parents are present in the United States illegally. Okay? He basically suggests contemporaneous sources instead support what common sense suggests. Conferring United States citizenship requires a more meaningful connection than mere presence by happenstance or illegality, the 18-page brief states. That connection, evidence repeatedly instructs, was parental domicile. Supreme Court precedents likewise cuts against a mere presence rule and for a domicile-based rule. It goes on, the brief goes on to reference previous Supreme Court cases arguing that birthright citizenship does not apply to those who are subject to the laws of foreign countries. In 1872, the court's decision in the slaughterhouse cases stated that the citizenship clause was intended to exclude from its operation children of ministers, consuls, and citizens or subjects of foreign states born within the United States. And again, this is the case. Skermetti also argued that the District Court of Maryland, the federal court handling that case, is not within its rights to prevent the entirety of Trump's executive order from being implemented. Now, the one thing that I'm going to tell you is that just about everybody points to, okay, that everyone points to the Wong-Kim arc versus the U.S. And the reason why that one does not cover illegal aliens and foreign-born folks here in the U.S. is because when you look at the history, the time period, China, first of all, does not recognize that anybody can just, throw off their citizenship of being Chinese. And so as a part of that, the U.S. reacted in the same way, saying basically, well, we classified you, if you live here, you can get this classified classification called a permanent resident status. And if you get a permanent resident status, that's a different status than an illegal alien or someone who is foreign born and just visiting here, which again is the whole purpose of this. Okay. The point that I'm making here is that there is precedent and there is definite conversations. There is historical references. There are all kinds of evidence that basically shows that just because you come here and, sorry, ladies, drop a baby, that baby is not an automatic American citizen. Okay. That was not the intent to be that way. And there's several instances of this across the board. The American people, even the founders, recognized that there were people here on this land that were not subject to our laws. For an example, the Native Americans. For the longest time in our history, Native Americans were not considered U.S. citizens, and they were not afforded the same rights as a U.S. citizen. Okay? That's the point. And also, too, even Teddy Roosevelt had talked about this, that you can't just be born here and be considered a U.S. citizen. You have to have an allegiance. There is an allegiance factor to this. So the fact of the matter is that when this does go to the Supreme Court, we're going to see the first time for a case to be presented that deals with literally illegal aliens and their actual status. Because it was wrongly interpreted that if you just come here and have a baby, that baby automatically becomes a United States citizen. That isn't the case. And there are several people, not only the ones that were in the debate back and forth about this, but there are several people that even mentions all of this. History shows that wasn't the intent. It wasn't the intent to just make it to where you just because you're born here, you're automatically a U.S. citizen. Now, whether or not we define it a little bit more and say, well, because the baby, and here's where I think it might end up going. The baby itself has no legal right to be a quote unquote U.S. citizen until they turn 18, which ironically is sort of the way, at least, I don't know if they've changed it, but back many, many years ago, that's where the Germans had it in their laws, were that if you were born on German soil at 18, you had the opportunity to declare yourself a German citizen. And Buddy, no, that's ridiculous. Come on. Buddy says, so if someone in Africa pledges allegiance to the U.S., and they become a citizen. Well, if they are here and they become naturalized, then yes. But they don't just from there come over here and just become a citizen. They have to go through the naturalization process. Okay? Anyway. All right. So the last thing that I want to point out to you is, has anybody read or heard of Culturecidal? It's a Substack by John Hawkins. Okay. And every once in a while he puts out a free or non behind a paywall kind of thing. Okay. And basically, in this particular case, he talks about explaining to liberals why everything can't be free. If you get an opportunity, I mean, you may not have to necessarily like subscribe to his paid version, but you can pick up little bits and pieces. He puts them out, you know, every couple of weeks or whatever, or every week, something like that. But he's basically talks about why everything can't be free and trying to explain this to a liberal, which of course okay, buddy, I didn't say it was just allegiance. I said it was more than just birth. Buddy puts out, you said it was about allegiance, not location of birth. It's both. It's location of birth plus allegiance. That's the point. Anyway, going on here, Culturecidal talks about explaining to liberals why everything can't be free. And he kind of goes through quite a few different things on here. But basically what he's saying here is that Democrats seem to think that money is just created on trees and that the government just creates money. And because the government creates money, that there isn't any need to have to pay for hardly anything like education, et cetera, et cetera. And this is, of course, what Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have been calling for and so on and so forth. But the problem with this, of course, is the fact that the money itself, all right, is a representative of value. And that if you no longer value whatever this representation of it is, it basically, that dollar, that piece of representation of value goes down in value. Okay. And also, too, what a lot of people don't seem to understand, especially on the left, is that government doesn't create anything. Government doesn't create wealth. Government, well, I got to be careful when I'm talking about that because obviously, I mean, Democrats, they're fighting right now to keep their wealthy habits alive. But the thing about it is that government in its purest form doesn't make anything. It cannot give you something. It cannot give you something just because it has to take it from somebody else first. In essence, the money that the government has comes from the taxpayers. Or in the case of our problem, because we're $36 trillion in debt, we borrow on the word that we're going to pay them back, whoever it is that's loaning us the money. But government itself doesn't like magically create anything. Government isn't a manufacturer. It isn't a service-related industry or anything else. So, yeah. And he kind of talks a little bit about this in the piece. And again, like I said, I would suggest that he does some really good work over here. And I would suggest that you should try and check it out. It's called Culturecidal, Culturcidl, by John Hawkins, and you can find it at Substack, on Substack, or just at culturecidal.com, and you'll be able to find it there. So, but anyway. All right, folks. That is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And while you are there, make sure that you are signed in, and search up the American Perspective channel. Hit that green follow button to be notified every time I go live. Also, too, before you head off, make sure you hit those thumbs up, like buttons, whatever they are, all across all of my outlets, whether it is YouTube, X, Facebook, and of course the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night. Now, tomorrow night's Saturday, so that's an hour later. So tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.